Welcome back. Now, to discuss the issue further, we have environmentalist Momi Salim with us on the line, and let's get down to the questions. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Now, in your opinion, how can countries achieve consensus on curbing global carbon emissions?
To begin with, I think whatever countries agreed in the Paris Agreement and later, I think they should first of all try to implement that and translate those at the national level. And also, I think some of the countries need to kind of revise their NDCs, which do not really match the I would call it ambitious target of 1.5 degrees centigrade, because right now the Earth is the planet Earth is in the need for this for the kind of actions which can actually help us achieve 1.5 degrees target that we have set of curtailing emissions. However, I would like to mention here that Pakistan, I guess, is the only country or the first country to actually have announced that they are going to sort of put efforts to revise the NDC. So I think that's a very good step, a step in the right direction. And I think many of the countries need to sort of do it in full spirit and show commitment, and not only on the paper commitment, but actually at the local level by implementing it.
Now, why is reaching an agreement at COP24 so complex?
That's because, I mean, again, there are several lobbies which are also working against. There are climate deniers, for example, US. Right now, the leadership we can actually sort of categorize them as climate deniers. But in the hearts of the heart, everybody knows that this is true, because a lot of things are happening around the world which are sort of evidence of the fact that the world cannot go on. We cannot actually do business as usual. I think one of the major issues is the inability to understand that economic growth is not about just using resources, but it's actually about conservation. It's actually about rethinking your model of economic development. And I think that is not coming about, and those countries which are, so I would say this is more of a greed of some countries which is actually having a toll on the rest of the countries. And unfortunately, we are unable to sort of comprehend, not us as individuals, but I think some of the country leaderships is unable to comprehend that at the end of the day, whatever economic growth you achieve, it is going to reverse given the climate change impact. So one has to think pragmatically. Things are not as they were before the industrial revolution and also in the beginning of it. Now we have to take some measures, because we have already overstepped the resources of this world, and world is unable to repair itself so quickly. So we have to be a little conscious of the fact, but I think it's only that skewed concept of economic growth which is sort of hegemonizing this entire thought process of some of the leadership.
And why do you think Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, the US and Russia are opposing a unanimous resolution on climate change?
See, some of these countries are the fuel and the oil and the coal lobbies. So you have to understand, again, it's the economic growth, it's the model that they want to adopt, and the quick trajectory of growth that they want to achieve. I think what we really need to see is decoupling of carbon emission from the economic models, which is not coming about. It so is expensive in the beginning, but now I think with the renewable energies really coming down, the prices coming down globally, the shift isn't that difficult. But I think it is being made difficult because they want to actually, because see, for developing countries, it could be we could actually do something which would be we can start from the clean start. We can make a clean start, whereas those countries which had initially invested in coal and oil and other things, now it's very difficult for them to sustain in a world which is actually demanding more sustainable ways of let's say energy, of development. So I think it's just the hesitation of going to another kind of, I would say, how do you say, the model. That's why they are a little hesitant on this side to sort of go forward and experiment or do new things which are much better for the planet, rather than actually just doing business as usual. So I think it's the lobbies which are actually really trying to, and also the fact that they don't want to pay for the loss and damage of the developing countries. That's also because once they understand and once they take into account, oh yeah, we have to pay for the damages that we have caused to this world, then I think it will fall. So they don't want to even take responsibility, which has been the debate from the very beginning. So I think after Paris Agreement, unfortunately, things have come back to where they were. And I see it that way. Maybe things change we just have a day or two left. But to begin with, I think this is the issue.
And are these countries colluding to sabotage global climate concerns?
Yes, they are. I think another thing I just wanted to add was that one of the hesitation in adopting this new or actually continuing this COP24 conversation and all of that is also because initially it was said that, whatever NDCs present, we could at least achieve 2%. 2 degrees increase, we could actually live with that. But the recent IPCC report actually tells us that no, it has to be 1.5. It cannot exceed that. Hence, I think it is just that hesitation that, now we'll have to really bring radical change. So I think they're really, the entire debate is called climate justice, and I think I said it in your last program as well. This is an urgency on the human rights grounds, because right now I think humans are suffering more than anything. This planet doesn't need us; we need this planet. So this understanding has to come, and I think it's a human rights violation which needs to be considered. And right now, this entire discourse has to sort of talk about how this is going to violate the basic human rights in this world.
Are we seeing an economic green revolution that will dominate the future?
Well, yes, it is there. We see everywhere in the world, you see electric cars being introduced, you see new innovation taking place, effective innovation, as I call it, where, infrastructure is being built, which is climate friendly, where new ideas are being generated. The new generation and the youth is very much, mindful of the fact that we have to go forward. The only way forward is actually sustainable means through renewable energies, through less water-intensive agriculture, through other conservation methods and means. Again, I think it's not only the leaders which are going to decide this, but at the end of the day, it will be cities or individuals which will be determining the future of this world. And I think we should stop looking forward to that, Donald Trump or, for that matter, Putin or Pakistan or any other country is going to come forward and sort of commit to it. It boils down to individual commitment. And I think it's actually us who have to actually look at our choices, the choices that we make as individuals of how we use resources and we abuse them. We have to actually refuse all those things so that the demand is not created and the supply stops.
Now, the IPCC reports have recommended far-reaching changes to how we will consume energy in the future. Is the report going against reality when countries, especially in the Gulf region, completely depend on fossil fuels for their economic sustenance?
See, I mean, it's not about which country wants what at this point in time. It's about what the planet wants. And I think that it is not unrealistic when we say the Earth needs us. See, the ice on the poles is melting faster than even the IPCC is predicting. So there is yet another agency which has been sort of declared during this COP24. So we have to understand that it is not basically any country which is going to agree or not agree. Basically, we need to actually see what is happening and how urgent we need to do it. And if within this, if some countries are unable to adapt, it's again survival of the fittest, Whoever is going to think about new models, because this debate has been going on since 1977 or before. So one has to think why these countries did not think at that time that they have to adjust themselves with the new changing. And I don't actually agree that they do not have other models or they can't do it. I think these are rich countries, and many other countries in the world are actually almost shifting like completely towards more sustainable ways. You look at Morocco, for example, it is completely going towards renewable energy. You look at Costa Rica, you look at other countries. So these are rich countries. They can easily do that. It's only the will of the government and the will of those sitting in the power corridors who are also sort of backing some kind of economic lobbies, I would say, like the oil lobby and coal lobby, and they are not coming out of the traditional, concepts of economic growth. So I think it's not about being realistic. Anyway, we need radical changes. We need radical changes from individual level to top or top to bottom, both ways. So it's just about realization and implementing it. We have all the tools available. We just need to put them to work.
And can countries be held accountable if they don't agree to the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change's reports?
See, global governance does not have enough, I would say, teeth, so it cannot really hold accountable. This is one of the lacunas of the global governance, which we say, like UN and UNFCCC, UN bodies, and the way we are. This is also global governance where everybody's coming together. It's not about accountability. It's also about several mechanisms which have been made now, according to which they can be sort of pushed back. Even if the US, for example, carbon tax, none of the countries can actually come out of it. Now, if you start implementing that rigorously, then I don't think any country agrees or doesn't agree. It's only that they'll have to pay more or they'll have to. So I don't think we do have certain mechanisms, very smart mechanisms. I think a lot of thought has gone into this entire COP process since years, and now it's sophisticated enough and mature enough in a way where they can actually bring these countries, if not hold them accountable otherwise, but at least bring them into this kind of a loop where they eventually will have to shift, So I don't think that it is some kind of a thing where you and I or these countries can decide, but actually the circumstances are deciding everything for us. And I think that even if they don't agree, they will have to be brought into loop. It's a little. It's not very encouraging to see what's happening at COP, because we were really expecting that it will be more on the loss and damage in the developing countries. Will be getting some kind of compensation or some kind of commitment. But I think the entire process, these 4 countries have derailed, and Australia has not sort of even commented on it. So this entire thing is quite like, I think they have hijacked the entire debate by doing this. But at the end of the day, it is not that they can get away with this, because if carbon tax, as I mentioned, or other things, we do have mechanisms by which we can bring them in the loop.
Now, since the PTI came to power, various projects have been undertaken to tackle climate change. Do you think that these efforts are reasonable and sustainable for the future?
Well, they are, but they are not comprehensive enough. I would not say that they are the only initiatives that were to be taken, but also considering the fact that it has only been 100 days or a little more to this government, the process is going in the right direction. I think they have really put it in the, where they set the tone, I would say. So even the commitment that the advisor has made at the international level of actually, looking into their indices is a big step. And I think that there is an intention, a good intention that is there with the government, and I hope that they are able to sort of also look into other options and other things. But to begin with, in Pakistan, we do not have a lot of knowledge on climate change, honestly. I mean, there are people who are working on it, but we are just getting some kind of secondary knowledge. And right now, we need to actually invest more in research. And we also need to invest more in innovation, because if you have local technologies, local innovation, only then you can bring about some change. Because then you go back to the same, transfer of technology, we don't have technology, we can't do this, we are dependent. So I think we need to first invest in human capital in Pakistan, which is actually the health and the education of our new generation. And we are lucky in the sense that we have almost like 52 or youth bulge, I would say, which is above 50%. So we need to sort of invest in that and try to bring in change more faster than the other countries can do. And we don't need to borrow or get the technology. We can actually come up with these things, because because now, as I said, tools are available. We just need to be a little more smart in implementing, and also a little more smart in creating or bringing about local solutions. And one thing that I really want to mention here is the local wisdom, which has been going on since the COP is there. I think it has, Conference of Parties has been going on, that, local wisdom has to be put into place or has to be utilized in order to bring about solutions which are more sustainable. Because I do not understand the landscape of, maybe because I live in Islamabad, I might not be able to understand the landscape of northern areas of Pakistan or the southern areas. So when the locals are there, they have been adapting to the environment and everything since ages. So we need to take in account their wisdom as well. We need to sort of bring that up, and that is missing in Pakistan. So we need to actually just put ourselves to reorganize ourselves. And I think the government has a kind of skill as well as it has a kind of intention. So I'm really happy that we have a government which is mindful, but I think still a lot needs to be done.
And what more can Pakistan do to tackle the problems of water and food security in an interlinked manner?
I think water and food security, the Nexus approach, and I think I remember to have mentioned this in an earlier program with you as well. The Nexus approach, which is world over now being considered very important, we have to actually adopt that, which is to say that the policy of one policy on one side affects the policy, affects another resource. For example, you have a certain policy on water which might affect land, or you have certain policy on energy, renewable energy. That and having said that, what I would like to actually, so let me just give example to explain. For example, if you're setting up renewable energy, big solar farms, then you have to be mindful of the fact that you are taking away agricultural land, or you are using land in a certain way. So you have to see what kind of impact will it have on food production, food security, and at the same time you also have to see what kind of impact will it have on water. Likewise, if you have a water policy, how is it going to impact food production, or food policy that is going to impact water? For example, agriculture uses more water. So I think the policies have to be made in line with policies from all sectors. And in Pakistan, I think one of the issues, especially which has become more deep because of the 18th Amendment. I would not say 18th Amendment is bad, it is good, but I think because of the lack of planning of 18th Amendment, what has really happened is that the gap between different agencies and different institutions has widened, because there is a need for collaboration, cooperation across sectors. And that is how we can adopt the Nexus approach, because if we do not have that kind of collaboration or cooperation between different departments, we won't be able to sort of bring about the change that we want. Then everybody will be doing work in silos, and that is not good at the end of the day.
And do you think that environmental protection is at all a divisive issue in Pakistan? How can Pakistan tackle these problems with the help of regional partners such as India and China?
I think regional connectivity is very important because there are many lessons that we can learn from each other. There are many experiences we can take from each other and not reinvent the wheel. Because in many aspects, for example, in wind energy, India is far ahead. So we can learn a lot from that, because we do share the same kind of landscape, we do share the same kind of terrain, almost the same kind of terrain in South Asia and the weather and everything. So we can understand and we can learn from each other faster than actually just importing knowledge from Europe or other places. First of all, it's about knowledge sharing. The second thing is that collaboration and cooperation, as I mentioned earlier in my talk about renewable energy and the transfer of technology, we can actually collaborate across region to sort of enhance that too. Exchange programs can be fostered, exchange programs can be held in order to foster knowledge exchange and learning among the youth, for example. I think regional connectivity is a building block for global governance, and we need to sort of really invest in that, and we need to come out of this, this not very connected South Asia We need to really invest in the regional connectivity, because at the end of the day, as I said, climate change is going to push the cities and push not the because see, environment doesn't have boundaries, climate change doesn't have boundaries. So we will have to eventually collaborate across border and also within the countries and across countries. So why don't we start it now when we still have time, rather than waiting for something to happen where we are not prepared enough, or something that comes instantly and we have to sort of respond, do symptomatic treatment. So preventive measures are more important, and regional connectivity is very important. Europe has come up with this electric grid. So we can also sort of think of these things where we can tap into hydro, where we can more so tap into wind, where we can tap into solar more. And so I think we can really learn. So I think this we as South Asia have a lot of potential, but unfortunately, because of our lack of cooperation across border, we are really losing a lot globally.
Thank you so much for having joined us.
Thank you.
Now, the COP24 conference has ultimately highlighted that all the countries recognize the need for guidelines to be in place so that they can move on to implementing the Paris Agreement. However, all of the countries are also mindful of the 2018 deadline to agree on something in principle. So if we are to course correct fast and well, efforts and investment is required urgently, including economic transition, ambitious reductions in greenhouse gas emissions, technology exchanges and knowledge sharing, and ultimately, it is also all going to come down to the ephemeral trust among nations, which is an important element that could only be realized if proper measures are in place. However, with developed countries such as the US and Russia refusing to even acknowledge simple scientific reports, presently we seem to have a deadlock, and it seems that a long road lies ahead for the world community to protect our world from an imminent ruin that it currently faces. That's all we have for you tonight. I was your host, Vikas Asgar. I hope you enjoyed the show.